has the little bloop going on, but then it shifts to the
Yes.
slower one.
This is the track I was wondering about.
Then
That
it goes
little
away.
bloop.
Then it goes away for this part.
Oh yeah.
And then it comes back.
The bloop is like at certain parts. Matter of fact, if I'm looking at that wave, I can almost see him. Yeah.
Sorry,
It is like a. It is like
really
frogs.
have to go now, 'cause I gotta get up earlier with Kira's school.
Okay.
Okay.
Have a good night.
Good night, Ange.
Man, now I want to sing it again.
I know it sucks. Get closer to the mic. Eat the mic.
Closer to the mic. You wanted me to spit it out, right? You want me to taste the sweet aura, taste it a little sour, but I'll take a little
rap
bite.
portion.
Aura, all right, I'm out.
All right, good night. Those fucking bongos kick major ass. They keep you entertained.
Check it out though. If we the first ones I found, let me just do this here. Instead of
Is
using
this
the ones,
one that
I made it a combo. Like, this is what you would hear with the bloop the whole time.
you played something either last night or the night before that I thought was Santana-ish. Is this it?
I don't think I played this one. I don't think I played this one for you last night. So there's a different one.
You had something else where you did a drum. You did a drum beat mixed with like good fucking. And first thing I thought was like it's got that Santana kind of flavor. This does too.
Yeah, that one was
that kind of Latin fucking. That Santana sound.
I want to say it was probably the one of the funk drums one that I did where it was just because it was basically another one where it had like drums and congos or whatever that I dragged in as loops, right? Is my guess.
Yeah. It was congos in that case.
And it wasn't the one I did with Rachel.
Were these congos or bongos? Because I don't remember. I just remembered the sound and thinking Santana.
See, it might have been. I think it might have been this one. So it might have been the one with Rachel. No, probably not that one. That's probably not the one, right?
That's the one with Rachel?
This is the one with Rachel. So that's probably not the one with.
No, that's not the one I thought was like Santana-ish.
Yeah.
It might have actually been one of those fucking awesome jams that you were playing from some of the bands that you do. I just remember hearing like that fucking. Oh no! It was your conga track.
Yeah, I want to say it was like one of the drums.
Wait a minute! No! You're right. It was this one. Just without because you soloed
part of it,
your drum tracks and your bass. The one that I was asking you to let me hear your bass.
Yeah. So that would be the one with Rachel. Then that would be Happy Slow.
That's the one that made me think Santana-ish.
That was where every time I go back into it after she does something, it's like everything's soloed. It's like all the tracks are soloed.
Is this the one?
Like, why would you solo?
Well, yeah, that's a BandLab thing.
Yeah.
I think BandLab's doing that. Because now that I see it on like fucking every time I download a Cakewalk project, they make assumptions.
Right. So I think
if you do get the mix, if you get the track mix, the wet track with the dry track, then all the dry tracks are muted by default at this point. You know, when you're downloading them from BandLab.
Yeah. And that was the every other that we were talking about, like mute 1357.
I think what you see here is people who are using the mobile app.
That could be
soloing all the time. Everybody that I see that on, it seems like the last person to fork it was on a mobile. because Lou sometimes is on a mobile and sometimes he's starting to do it from his computer, and it does make different revision results.
This is definitely the one because remember the little piece of the conga pattern in the front where I then brought it in.
Yeah. Is this the one you had to slide?
Yep. Slid it just a little bit.
Yeah, it was like slightly different beats per minute.
Yeah. Well, no, same beats per minute, but it was about lining up the double conga hit. Like you see the double hit, single, 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 double, single. Like when it worked out like that, I wanted to work it out with the double snare hit.
Yeah. This is the one I was saying, like visually, all you got to do is find those little hits across the song and line those up, and everything else snaps in place.
Exactly. And then I added the bass part. The guitar should give it.
See? Now, those acoustics, the steel that just came in, I would have faded that in.
Yeah, that was just me hitting solo, just bringing it. Like those are in the track, but I was just listening to just the conga part. So like my solo.
Oh yeah, I wasn't looking.
And then there's also just the piano part.
That's nice. How did he? It starts to become too much.
Yep. That's why I was thinking different parts we could use at different times.
Yeah. And that's what it should be, a little handoff. Overall on the song, I like this. How did this song start? This was another one of yours with the drums and bass?
Yep, I started with drum loop, conga loop, bass, and then she added guitar, and then she added piano, and now she's talking vocals. But like this is starting on the guitar side, right? And like you said, bringing in piano later, be like after the first time around.
The guitar's off. There's a latency problem on the guitar.
Yeah, I can fix that. But like you said, handing off between the guitar and piano is a cool idea.
Yeah, this is a nice like handoff. And bouncing between the piano and the that acoustic, that string is not aligned properly. It's not that it's bad, but it's not aligned properly.
Yep. I heard that too. It's almost like by the fade or the delay, but I can just slide it on. I have the same thing happen with my bass. The latency's off, so I just have to manually slide all the time.
Here's my question. The steel guitar, how is that getting recorded?
No idea. That's her.
Okay, so again, I want to ask her, how was that being sampled? Was that a keyboard playing an acoustic guitar to a strum programming, or was that like an actual guitar being mic'd?
That's where, to me, if you listen to this little part in here, it was almost like the like when it goes to the fade out chords. Quick, and get the piano.
And also, what interface they were using, because latency problems come from what you're recording and how it's getting into the computer, and it's almost always how it's getting in the computer. Even those focus rates, which have almost zero. I mean, the beauty of those ASO devices is they are good for recording. Latency starts to go away. But on BandLab, if that was an acoustic guitar being played into a phone recording it, BandLab's fucking recorder always has like 0.01 millisecond difference. And for those particular strum hits, they need to be on time. And if they're not, you hear it.
Yeah.
And they come in afterwards. They come in clashing against what they're supposed to be like lifting up.
Well,
That's
it's
the
funny is on
problem
the
with
waveform, they look like
latency
they're,
situations like that.
some of them look like you're solid, but it depends on like, you could hear it when you hear it. So let's see here.
Yeah.
Yes, like that last one.
It probably can be fixed simply by sliding it back,
Yeah,
like
because
literally.
I've done
like
that with my tracks before, so I can definitely do that. It didn't seem like the piano was behind though, right? Like that was the other thing I was curious about. Is
And that's also why I want to ask them about their equipment setup, because once you know your equipment's latency, when you use a mic to record a guitar and you see the like precise slide that you have to do here, that little slide that you do here, I bet you're going to have to do that every time you're in that same scenario with that sound card.
exactly.
And that
That's what I was
is
saying
that
about my bass. Yeah.
digital calibration. You do it once, and whatever sound card you're using, my Phantom, fortunately, I haven't had to deal with timing with most of my equipment. I haven't done vocals either, and if I do, I'm doing it through this Mackie because the latency here is exactly what I always wanted in a mixer.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a fucking good sound card, but with all the Mackie mixing built in with it.
If it was
I want
just
to buy another one. I'm so happy with this one.
the Mackies, definitely, like you were saying, the preamps on the Mackies are also awesome. I mean, even just a little 402 that I got, I mean, it's been doing a kick-ass job for a long ass time.
Yeah, it's the first time that I feel like I have an actual like vocal mixer. Every vocal input, like my Roland, both my Rolands have mic ins, like they're keyboards. You can sample from a microphone, you can sing in the mic, but their preamps suck balls when it comes to like this vocal signal you want to get. The Mackie was like really the first amp since the 90s. Since I used to be PVs back in the 90s, the fucking PV sound, especially if you were plugging in mics into them, they had the boards.
Yeah, the PV3 input amp of some kind when I had my Casio CZ1 that we were talking about.
Yeah, and that was also when I had the CZs. I actually, I think I have a CZ virtual plugin. I gotta get that set up.
Yeah.
I miss my synth string from the CZ. I lived off that one fucking patch for almost 10 years.
I just love the fact that you could literally make any sound into any other sound, or make any sound from scratch or whatever, and just put it in there as your own. You could just mess with the waveform, mess with the attack, mess with this, mess with that, and make it all,
Yeah.
whatever sound you wanted, and then save it on the thing, which is always cool.
And they did treat it like the way synthesis up till that point. Synthesis was all about sawtooth, triangle, all the basic waveforms. It's
Square
like what we were
wave.
talking about earlier, RGB, and
Yep.
in sound, like you only have these waves. Everything else is made from
It's
this
all
source.
derivations. Yep.
Yeah,
Derivatives,
derivations, derivatives,
derivations. Yeah. Did you listen to the Riders of the Storm I did earlier?
No, not yet. But here, stop sharing for a second.
Yep.
Because as we're going along, I want to get this machine.
Capture the stuff you run to.
Well, yeah, the cakewalk recording. Some of this is gonna like be download time because it needs to fucking download cakewalks.
Yeah.
While it's doing that, we got plenty of time. You can take back the share at that point, like because what I want to record is getting into the process, and then once it's like downloading for 20 minutes, I'm gonna snip that. So like that's going to get cut. Although good thing with Zoom is Zoom's going to record everything. Right. So if we do a good discussion because you're sharing something, gravy. Like, hey, free fucking footage.
Ooh, that's one we're going to do at some point then also, is the playing left-handed bass for keys, because you got to hear this guy play. It's freaking ridiculous. I mean,
and I'd actually I'd really like to know how many left-handed fucking people are playing instruments out there because I'm one of them, and I would love to know all the other ones and how they deal with this fucking right hand world.
Actually,
For
one of
keyboards, it doesn't suck,
no, because the keyboard
but
just makes you
other
more active
instruments,
left hand. But yeah,
instruments, you could almost say it's a conspiracy therapy.
now Bill Medea
Or
is one of our
airy.
friends, and he's a lefty. He plays guitar and he plays bass, and he's got all the lefty equipment at the house.
Can't he flip though? I thought Bill was one of those ones who can actually play both ways.
I think he can flip. I don't know if it's as useful or as good, but to me, it's
Well,
like
yeah,
I can flip it
yeah.
over and I can make something happen, but it's not going to be like me playing the other way.
I had broken arms 5 times from when I was born till I was 12. Half of my youth, I had to write with my right hand because I always broke my left arm.
Yeah.
Became ambidextrous in some senses, but these dudes who flip their guitars, that is some crazy like savant muscle memory.
Well, to me, that's
The
actually a
Jeff
good
Becks
one.
and the Medeas are the rare.
That's one where I'll flip it over just to basically humble myself about guitar, because like things feel easy when you just pick up a guitar and you just make sounds and you're like, oh, it's always been this easy. And then you flip it the other way and you're like, oh no, the hell it was not. Because all of a sudden you're a beginner again. You're like ka clunk, and you're like, what the hell? Crazy stuff.
See, I haven't learned a new instrument in like 15 years. I think I need to,
You should.
just to remind myself of like the musical exploration that you get with something that you're still trying to feel out the instrument as much as you are your music.
I would definitely recommend bass, just because 4 strings. It's
That's
the
the
same as the low
one.
4 on the guitar, and
It's the
you'd love
one I
that.
should have started with. I should have never tried to start with guitar. I wanted to be Eddie Van Halen. So
Yeah,
like
so many people
not
did.
Michael Anthony. So like, I tried a guitar. I said, wait a minute. Stringed instruments are fucked up. So I wanted to have a stringed instrument, and piano was the compromise. It is the best instrument to start with. But
Also, with all
after
the
that,
knowledge, that
should
you
have
picked
gone
up
to
on
bass.
keyboard, all the
I
everything you
should have
picked up
gone
on
to
there, yeah,
bass.
translates.
Oh yeah, now I think bass in my head. As far as on the keyboard, I can simulate anything a bassist can do on my keyboard, just like guitar. For the most part, if I can't play it live, I know how to fucking program it to like shift and make that same wailing sound that the guitarist would make on his guitar. It takes actually more work to tell a keyboard how to modulate that shit, but
That was one that somebody was doing on the
if you are
show
if you are
yesterday,
good
was
with
it?
the wheel.
Somebody was doing really good with the
Oh
wheel. It was it Foy?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's what I was just thinking.
And now
No, it
I
was
did
that.
call it the wrong thing though. I call it the mod wheel, and you correctly mentioned the mod wheel and the pitch wheel, which is a good way to cover that, because
Well, yeah,
I
both of
mentioned the
them.
mod wheel,
I'm
and it was definitely the pitch
intimidated
wheel he
by
was working on.
I'm intimidated by both of them. Ever since the first like keyboard I had, and I was like, "Whoa, there's a wheel there. I got a whammy bar, shit." But I never met. I could never feel it out. Me, I'm an expressional player. I am a piano player at heart. So all the synthesis stuff, I love it. I can play some of it solo like a guitarist, kind of once in a while. But I always want to go back to nice moody arpeggios or chords that you can jam off of.
Yeah. Now you don't have the screen sharing right now, right? Because you were gonna start a process with that.
Well, actually, yeah, I was about to hit it right now.
Oh, sweet. I just wanted to make sure you knew you weren't sharing, because otherwise it won't catch it in the video.
Yeah, what I'm gonna do is find a way to move this zoom bar so it's not in my way. Okay, and what we need to do here is get Cakewalk starting to install. So this is a fresh machine. Like I started with a base Windows 10, you know, machine that I made nice and clean, optimized with no extra bullshit. It's made to not get notifications. For a music machine, all that shit gets turned off. And then I made a 3D Studio, which is a different machine, but the DAW Studio, it's got nice settings. As far as a virtual machine goes, 8 gigs of RAM, most of my other music machines are on 4. So like my virtual machine is actually more beefier than my actual music machine. And 8 processors because I gave it 2 physical cores, and each one of these cores has 2 cores on top of them. So I end up with 8 cores processing, awesome for like Halion and all.
And it's disk space you don't need for just for the original operating system. You're using the external for everything else, right? Yeah, looks like your camera crapped out. The 3D Studio might still be on, but it's muted. But the camera from across the room's off. At the end of the project, you're gonna have all the different DAWs in there, though. Ah, there he is.
You know, the cool thing is that Zoom continues to record, so it doesn't actually stop recording.
Ah,
That's
sweet.
great. That's a snip part because my internet bounced. Since they realigned it, it has not been. I think it's more than just needing the realignment. But I
Yeah,
did get tight with the with the installer because you know what, you want to be friendly with your local internet representatives who fix your shit and
yeah.
install your modems. You want to know who's the dude, and for satellite out here, I guarantee you this guy is the only guy in our neck of the woods.
Yep. You don't want him pissed off. Cable guy.
No, I wanted his card. Like shit, man. When he walked in my room, he was like, "Holy fuck!" Yeah, and you know, obviously, oh, you're a musician, huh? But then he was looking at my network setup and my what I'm trying to do off of a satellite that got basically blown 2 inches because of the wind.
Right. And that'll mess everything up.
Yeah, but he told me as far as their upgrades that they're going to be doing, they're shifting their satellites from space based to a hybrid where it's half space, half mobile networks. And with 5G, if they're piggybacking 5G on the satellite, eventually I might have decent bandwidth here. Maybe
Nice.
not in the next 5 years, but hopefully
But something to
December
look
is what
forward
they're
to.
saying. All right.
I remember back in the my uncle had one of the early, like early satellite setups, and this was back, the 70s and 80s or whatever. He was out in Utah in a spot where
Yeah,
he just didn't
when
have
they
good
were
spot.
using it for cable.
Right, exactly.
They wanted to see TV.
Yep.
Now it's like fucking data crack. Oh my god, no internet. My brother's got 3 separate internet solutions just to get half of the cable modem speeds we used to have.
Yeah. There's
Ah,
your update.
okay. So did the screen pop back up?
I see the screen here, but I see that your device will restart to update outside of active hours, and another screen hiding behind your
The- a-
properties there.
Actually, that's not the physical machine saying that. That's the virtual machine. So
Right.
at least it
I just see
should
those
be.
back there.
If my physical machine right now.
No, those are back there because
Yeah,
they're
I'm
behind
just
your
double
settings window.
checking. Yeah. Not now. It is the physical machine. No, it's not. Okay. Yeah. The virtual machine has done an update. Windows pumped out a bunch of big service packs in the last year. Definitely, there's been more big changes in Windows in the last year than there have been in the last decade. And they're all in
You
that
got to try to stay
like
on top of shit.
security, the security and the privacy areas. I've been going through their settings again. You have to do it. Like if you don't actually go through all those freaking Windows options under settings, you won't understand all the shit that this computer is doing. So the cool thing, this is the virtual machine. I can literally let that machine reboot.
And it'll be fast too.
Yeah. And I love not having to reboot physical machines. Those are
Did
the
you say
ones
that
you want
the
to keep on.
did you say that that 60 gigs of storage that you have allocated to this machine is that a physical platter or is that solid state?
Oh, it's platter. Yeah. I have like the built-in system. The built-in system drive has like a 2 terabyte system drive. So alls I have on this system is literally Windows 10, a few simple design things. I like to run certain programs on the physical machine. Truth be told, I'm not going to be recording into a virtual machine when I don't have to. Latency. You are likely to get some latency if you're trying to talk to a USB device and it has to go through the main operating system to go to the virtual operating system. My mic signal on my Roland might actually have like a couple millisecond, you know, lag
But also,
till it goes through that layer.
like I said earlier, though, you can run that calibration just to so set it once and done kind of thing for
Well,
your
yeah,
setup. But
if you know that the hardware you have and the setup you're using has this much latency is pretty consistent. When it's a hardware latency, 0.005 milliseconds is pretty consistent. It's always going to be like that in that same scenario. Plug something different in, maybe it might change. You'll know when you bring up Cakewalk if you're listening to it and it sounds like it's not hitting perfectly.
I think mine
And
actually
you don't always need a
overcorrected.
perfect hit.
Yeah, mine actually overcorrected for the latency on it. Where when I record a bass part and I listen back to it, my bass is actually early by a little bit instead of being a little bit late. So it's kind of overcorrecting. But for me, that's just a matter of just sliding it back. Like now that I'm aware of that, and I kind of like that, and I kind of use that to my advantage also for the fact that when a song starts, like that first note, I can be waiting, listening, and then as soon as I hear it, I hit it, and I know I'm late, but I hit it, and I know I can fix it by sliding it a little bit later.
Yeah. When it comes to that kind of latency, the whole track is misaligned. So if you know that you need to slide it up or down because the like time that it took to sample it is slightly off, you can realign the whole track. Those are
Yep.
easy corrections.
I've also had it
Where
where
latency
multiple
starts to
times.
suck is if you have like a really wide variety track that's like sometimes the timing is super important and other times it's not so much and it kind of fucks things up. You will occasionally have tracks that don't slide perfectly and you'll hear it. If you hear it, then you know like the time to capture is not perfect.
What I also had was songs where like I was able to slide it like that and get the beginning so it sounded just right, and then somewhere along the way, a third of the way through the song, there was a one of those clicks or the skips basically where there were too many tracks in the project or whatever, where something caused a little bit of a delay, and now from there on everything was misaligned. So I was able to figure out where that happened, cut it there, and slide the rest back where it needed to be. Now it's back in alignment until it happened again, and then fixed it again. So a couple of the songs I
Yeah.
had to actually do that a couple of times because there were so many tracks in the project.
And I got to give BandLab credit there. If you're sliding those tracks inside of the online editor, I don't know about what's going on with phones.
Yeah,
I
online
wouldn't
editor.
want to be sliding a track on a touch screen. But on the online editor, their track shifting tools aren't bad. I see people fix a lot of crazy. I've seen people take stuff that I put out there and run it through a blender and turn it into like this crazy beat. And I'm like, oh my God, that came from this?
Yeah, that's where
Some of those DJ tricks that like some of these half synth, half beat makers, definitely DJers,
yeah,
all those skills combined with the BandLab tools is dangerous.
indeed.
All right. We got to get Cakewalk on this machine. Our ultimate DAW machine needs Cakewalk. And we got to, and keep in mind, this thing knows nothing about nothing. It's a fresh install. So I probably have to actually log in.
Yep.
I literally like got it as up to date with the Windows updates, because if you don't update to the last Windows update that came out in 20 2019, 2020, a lot of the audio subsystem and some of the video changed drastically. Like Nvidia had to change drivers for shit because this version of Windows and that version of Windows don't handle video the same way. The extra features and in the audio side is why you had to have a certain version in order to run certain audio programs.
The advent of the
It's
RTX
more
cards
common
too, it was
on the
a big
Mac
thing.
side. Oh, the RTX, yeah. For especially for imaging and like video editing. Nowadays, if you want to use Adobe Premiere, you need at least if with your NVIDIA, you want the studio reference drivers. Otherwise, Premiere like says it's not that Premiere doesn't work. It doesn't get certain 3D features that
Like they
you
can't
might want to
guarantee
have
certain
depending
results.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it comes up with the screen says like your driver complacency is not perfect. You can't use all the shit we give you. That's the scenario.
Yep.
Because I do use Premiere on all these machines, but the RTX machine is the only one that has a valid driver anymore.
And as long as you have one machine in your area, then there you could test whatever it is on there if you needed to. If you had something that wasn't working.
All right. In order to grab Cakewalk, you're going to have to log into your BandLab account. And other than that little tidbit, what you're getting with this DAW is no notifications though. BandLab notifications suck. All browser notifications suck. Especially on your music machine. This machine does not want notifications while it's recording. That's something you need to turn off at multiple levels. I'll show you later like what I had to go turn off for notifications these days with this new version of Windows. Okay, getting Cakewalk is going to explore is the easiest way.
Actually, no, in the top right next to your picture is a little right next to
Oh
your
yeah,
notifications.
Yes, you're right. Now they have the little products. Yeah, I like that they did this.
Yeah.
Although, as far as options go, you don't want to be using them for their mastering. I mean, maybe if you're still trying to figure out your mastering, but once you figure out your mastering, you don't want them to master on top of your masters. It messes all the sound up. All right. Now this is going to tell me I need the BandLab Assistant, which I might have downloaded. Yes. See, this is the part that annoys me. I should just say block, huh? Like, yes, I don't want you to notify me ever. But with BandLab, there are times where the notifications would come in handy on other machines. Hopefully that does not it's not account specific. But if it is, I turn them off on most of my other machines. And the funny thing is you, the BandLab Assistant they push out as Windows 7 compatible and above. Cakewalk in itself is only compatible with Windows 7 on the 64-bit nowadays. They don't even make the 32-bit anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, this is not that big. And hey, I got my bandwidth back yesterday. My satellite reset. So
Nice.
this might actually download reasonably. It's only 63 megs. Yeah.
That was the assistant, or that was the Cakewalk?
This is the assistant. Yeah,
Okay.
true. Cakewalk is actually more than 63 megs, but seeing as my internet 61 megs would have been like 50 minutes last week.
Yikes.
Now, I like to run as administrator. So, one thing I always tell people to do when they're running setup files, run them as administrator because it's not as common as it used to be, but in the old days, if you didn't run as administrator or root, there's a lot of like 3D programs and complex shit that did not set itself up properly because it installed as a non-administrator. Silly shit, but Microsoft after Windows 8 and Windows 10 has changed the way they run processes, and setup files should be always run this way if you want to avoid potential like why doesn't this program work properly.
Did really make it a nice, easy process at this point.
Yeah, the assistant itself is not a hog. And it is a nice integration with your account on BandLab. Like you get to see all your projects, you get to manage it in a nice, simple app. If you want to have that app running all the time so you can keep track of shit on BandLab, it's better than a web page. A web page isn't live. I have to refresh my web page all the time just to update the chat.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be live, but that's the challenge with these modern browsers. They die. Or smart thinking makes them lose priority, and all of a sudden you got a page that's not refreshing itself.
Looks like it's asking you
So
something
the
down there.
assistant,
Yeah.
yeah, I saw the alert there. And you know, you could literally sit there for like 10 minutes, like what the hell? Because the window gets lost in priority.
I hate that.
Now, the thing with their assistant, because this is a local app, like this was installed on this Windows, and to log in, it actually integrates with the session data of the default browser. So in order for me to log in, it needed to connect to my it needed to connect to my Chrome in this case to see, hey, who are you on BandLab? If Chrome didn't know, the BandLab assistant wouldn't know who you are. But that's what it did. It
Grab
connected
that
with
from
the
there. Nice.
Chrome and said, oh, geez, you're Tony. And we need to go here and get this going. And before I do, yeah, the three things that you want to install from here are the studio, the drum replacer, and the theme editor. Melodyne, they have newer versions of Melodyne. If you're gonna check out Melodyne, the default that comes here is 4, and they have come out with a version 5 over like the last year and a half that is worlds apart better at what Melodyne does is analyze audio data and turns it into MIDI data. Or it can also do pitch shifting, and a lot of vocalists actually use it to fix, oh, slightly off, I'm a half step off. You can fix a vocal track now and then that way very cleanly. But you don't want to install it with Cakewalk because the one they give you is out of date. Go to Melodyne and get it from them.
Makes sense.
Well, they give you like a 30 to 90 day. A lot of these software companies are very generous with the amount of time they give you to check something out and see like, hey, does this fit my needs? In the old days, you just had to buy it to find out.
I remember
But
having Cakewalk way
if
back
you
when.
are, yeah, I started with the original Cakewalk when it was just MIDI, and it was like 1987 ish. And it was all DOS based, or in the case of Commodore, BASIC.
Doing music in BASIC. Wow.
Yeah, I actually did with the Commodore SID chip. Oh my God. I'm amazed that I did not get more into song programming, sequencing, and step editing, because when the Commodore came out with the SID chip, they started making tools at a time when I was like, oh my God, I can punch in music. Now
Nice.
I can appreciate that. Back then I was like, I don't want to fucking punch in music. I want to go jam with my boys over at the band room and get laid. That was your mentality in 1985. See, now this is the long editable part.
There you go. So in
Because
that case,
as much as my oh, you need coffee, huh?
always need coffee.
Run,
I was also
Forrest,
gonna.
run!
I could also play a song if you want, or do you want to keep the stream
Oh
recording
yeah,
this
yeah,
part
yeah,
up?
yeah. No, no, no. Actually, you can. You should be your host. So you can take the stream. I have to ask.
There you go.
As
So
co-host, you I
riders on
cannot take the screen from.
we'll get you little riders of the storm while I get my coffee.
Nice,
Tell me if it's playing when it starts,
perfect.
just so we can. Takes a few seconds to come
See,
in.
and that's how you kill a download time. Like shit, I gotta wait for this fucking 20 minutes. Play some songs.
Riders on the storm. Riders on the storm. Into this house we're born. Into this world we're thrown. Like a dog without a bone, I act around alone. Riders on the storm. There's a killer on the road. His brain is squirming like a toad. Take a long holiday. Let your children play. If you give the pain a rise, free family will die. Killer on the road. Yeah. No effects on the vocals yet. Just a little aggressive. Girl, you gotta love your hair. Girl, you gotta love your hair. Take him by the hand. Make him understand that the world on you depends. Our life will never end. Gotta love your man. Yeah.
See, now with just the level automation there, on your vocal tracks, just level automation.
Yep.
If you know the hooks like you give a dog a bone and the other hook right before they go into their change. If
Yeah.
you pull back your there's two, you're doing a double track, one a little lower than the other. The high track needs to actually automate up during those verse parts, and then when you come in with a I give a dog a bone hook, and then later when that hook happens again, both those times you bring back the lower track. The lower track you should actually bring down and back, so it actually is a rumble, like part of the storm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when it comes in, should be on the dog a bone part, and those hook parts is when you should bring that lower end up. And then it goes into a little, part where using both is useful, and then you go back to this. You want to focus on that higher part certain times in the song, and you want that higher part to almost be by itself. Like
Yeah.
everything else is in the storm distance.
Also, we were talking the other day about the mid voice and all that, and to me, it was like this
that's
one. I had like a low
that's
one,
the
and then this
Jim
high one. The high one is kind of, I
that's
guess,
the
that would
Jim
be the mid one.
Morrison the Jim Morrison effect when you're listening to like one of their songs, the way that they mix them. The mixers were really good at realizing like, damn, this guy's voice can carry everything on top of it. You get to hear awesome band material and awesome like vocal, like genius, legendary singer, and blend that the way that they did. They always highlighted his tone.
Yeah.
It's useful when you're doing like the kind of poetry he was doing and shit. That's where they were experimenting more with you know, sound of voice. The beatniks back in the 50s. In those coffee clubs.
That's still going with the install for a bit,
like
right?
Dobie Gillis.
I was gonna play that the one with what's his name, Jamiroquai, Matt Johnson, with the left-handed bass playing for keyboard. He's playing on a looks like a Yamaha Montage.
Jamiroquai.
Matt Johnson
Is his band lab name?
No,
there
no,
was a Jamiroquai back in the 90s.
That's the band. Yeah, that's what this is.
It was a kick-ass fucking catchy song.
Well, Jamiroquai is a band.
Oh, he's
also
on a motif.
Yeah.
Did that artist make a band?
Bass can make the sound of a chord.
I love those motifs.
Play you
I
an
almost
implied chord, not a
bought
whole chord, just root and fifth in C. So that would be.
From music legend Quincy Jones comes Playground Sessions, a new technology to learn the piano at home by playing your favorite songs.
B, C, and G.
You need it back?
I'm not sure. I think this is the same thing I did before. Why is it not? No, it's downloading still. Yeah, show me this and let me see what. I think I just literally repeated myself on the install because it looked like it stopped.
Yeah, it happens. It'll probably just come up with the second one saying you can't run it a second time or whatever.
Yeah, and it has happened in certain situations, especially with the slower connection. I will test that in multiple virtual machines and see if that's a reoccurring pattern, at least on the virtual machines where they go to sleep.
Yeah. Let's see what
you don't want them to go to sleep. Not when they're working.
Not when they're working. It's like, get your ass up.
G.
I don't like any
bass.
software telling my computer
Now
to
let's
sleep.
just run a drum machine and I'll show you how that can make lots of different chords with the same 3 notes. See, the bass is dictating what the chord is. Another example, C minor 9 and F minor 9. Okay.
Man.
But then if I play
Those are not
E flat and A
comfort
flat in the
chords.
bass, sounds totally different, even though it's exactly the same chords.
Wow, he's got a good bass hand.
Minor 9. Major.
Google, program us.
And that's quite a cool trick when you're writing. You know, the chords don't need to move much, but the bass can make them feel different. So I guess if we want to play like a bass player, we need to think like
I can't believe he.
The
I
bass
can't believe
is kind
he
of limited in
bounces
what it
the
can do
way
in
he
the context
bounces.
of the band.
He's got some
In
crazy
the
bounce
sense
too.
that it has to state the root of the chords a lot of the time. You know, it can't be playing fifths or other notes in the scale all the time because it'd be confusing what the chords were. The bass player has to move within those boundaries. And what they'll often do is they'll move up to the next chord change, for instance. So... they'll do that sort of movement.
You know, with
They'll
the
also
bassist,
use
you get to fill a lot of
you have to
notes.
stay on the root note. The way to make it interesting
As chords
is
change,
play it up an octave.
You're the one who shifts it.
Exactly.
So if I combine those.
I can't believe he's playing those at the
The other
same
thing
time.
they do tend to use a lot is a fifth going in between because it's quite a neutral note in the chord.
His left hand plays like an actual bassist, like the way it bounces.
Crazy good.
So if you combine all those things, you can start to
his right hand's
more
just
like a bass
being
player.
the chord accompaniment.
You can play it a lot more simply.
Is his hands moving so fast? I
going
can't
up
see
the octave, but leading into it each time.
Yeah. There's no way this frame rate's keeping up.
The fifth there.
Because from here it actually looks totally clean.
Awesome. That's an awesome bass line, though. It has
the components that he just talked about too.
And it has all the bounce and shuffle that you
the passing
want
notes
from a traditional bass player.
Obviously, another obvious bass player's trick. Doing the old disco walking pony. Another lick I use quite a lot. Let's say I'm in A minor. So start on the root on the higher octave, 7th, 5th, and then back to the lower root.
Man, I'm lucky my left hand even hits the right note. I'm sloppy with my left hand.
Playing
it's
the
not
bass,
my dominant.
And the chords at the same time as you can be totally coordinated.
I wish I was like that.
Go slightly slower here.
Like 9-inch nails. At least it started like that.
I like head like a hole.
He gave it a nice funk.
For just $67,
love that
you can
tone.
make as many videos as you
It's
want.
like a Wurlitzer.
You never need to pick up a camera or you.
That little biting like
thing
Wurlitzer sound.
Bass players might use is if you're in a minor 9 chord. So let's say I'm in F minor 9.
Is that like an 8-band EQ or something? Or are those like different features?
So the bass player, instead of going up the octave,
He's definitely using some of the motifs built-in effects processors.
Like
they have some good ones. That was like the best Yamaha line so far. It's got a fucking kick-ass slap bass too.
That's all. He's showing a close-up of the left hand for that. See if you can see that movement.
It wouldn't
just
take me
slight
long to get
variation,
in
the
that
same
groove.
sort of thing. The route's always been stated.
Yeah, I think it's easier than we both think.
And then it's
but
just sort of going
once you get it,
around
it's
the
going to be
route
just like incorporated all the
to
time,
create
which is
some
awesome.
movement. So I think it's cool to listen to your favorite bass players or your records that have great bass lines on them and try and copy them. You know, that's what I started out doing.
Yeah,
And
I
also because I
agree.
had to learn covers, so by default I learned.
I've been
really
definitely
good bass lines.
focusing more on the bass
and it taught me a lot
melody
about
than
how bass
anything
players
else.
think. So here's a nice
To
little lick
figure
to
out
learn. I
the
use all the time.
chords, I go to the bass. That's a
So
ripping electric
slowly,
chord.
it's leading up to the root from the 7th, and then just going down 7th, 5th back to the root. Obviously, can work in any key.
Very expressful. It's an expression in
About
its
accenting the
bounce.
end as well. You can crank it a bit.
An awesome piece of vocabulary. Yeah.
So
Well, it's like those wah 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 moments. You know, it's that kind of sound that will give you a wah wah. Wow, that's fucking funky.
I like to sort of be aggressive
Love
with
that
some of these passing notes. You just get such more attitude out of the whole thing. Practice hitting them quite hard and staccato. So the first note is long and the second note is short.
That is great keyboard advice.
So there you can hear I'm also
That shit
using
got
the
us through the
fifth as a little
70s.
passing thing and also a rhythmic thing.
Good job.
So it just gets really very lightly touched. And that's how bass players often do that movement where you hardly hear that middle note, but you do feel it.
That's got some bite on the low end.
Yeah.
I love the bite. Especially when you add it with the bass.
I'd like to learn to play worship piano.
When you mix that,
I'm a former
that
Nashville
bite from
pro,
that
and I've developed a system.
electric keyboard to the bass, it's the funk in that song.
Tons of funk. And this is the part now he's going to talk
like
about the independence of the left hand.
All right, Cakewalk is ready to continue its installation. I think it downloaded everything.
Sweet.
Oh,
I just stopped sharing so you can grab it if you want.
there we go. All right. So I'm getting that user access. I thought I turned off user access control. That's one of the most annoying things to come with Windows 8. But it's saying, hey, you just ran a program. It wants to make changes. Are you really, really sure?
And you're like, yeah, that's why I ran a program.
Exactly. Okay, so let's hide this shit because I don't need to see a bunch of noise. There. Our ultimate DAW. Yes, take my firstborn. And always do advanced. Even if you don't change anything, it's good to see what you could change. Otherwise, you don't learn how to install a program properly.
That's why every time, always do that. Yep.
Always advanced. If you have the option, take it. Okay, now here I like to pay special attention because where I put the VST folder, I don't like the default. So our first question was, okay, yeah, regular Cakewalk program and the Cakewalk core. This is all fine. But this, where's the, okay, the shared DXIs isn't what I'm concerned with. This is the one. VST plugins. I don't want it to just be under Cakewalk / VST plugins. I'm going to have a bunch of VST plugins that need to be unified for everybody. So I don't think it works if you just do it here. I've tried this in the past, mixed results.
Well, I usually go browse.
Awesome.
I usually go browse and then do the new folder.
It does work. Awesome. I guess they fixed that. So you can just get rid of the word cakewalk on the VST plugins. You're going to need to put your VST plugin somewheres, and program files is a good place for them. Cakewalk content, fine with that, right off of C. You do get a lot of useful content with Cakewalk. It comes with a bunch of MIDI beats and loops and useful chords. You can actually make stuff from that. In some cases, more functional than what you're doing with the loopers online. We'll put the content there. Everything else is good. Sure, make me a desktop icon. Now this just puts the program on. Those other two add-ons are going to go through their own installation process afterwards.
That was not the Melodyne,
but so
but the other
far,
two, right?
Yeah, I didn't put Melodyne because I will do a whole separate discussion on Melodyne. It is super useful. That is one of the few programs that I would say, depending on what you're doing, if you really want like a real-time music notator, like the little court stenographer taking every note you hit and turning it into MIDI data, which is useful.
Sounds like a good job for Clippy. Remember Clippy? Clippy, the Microsoft paperclip guy.
Oh God,
that'd be a good job for him.
Yeah. If he could ever do that, I would have kept him installed. And this part of the installation is actually not too bad. The studio one might actually take longer. It does download some samples. The actual program's not that big. We're not eating into that 60 gigs that we have right now. It's going to take a lot more than Cakewalk to fill that.
And that's good because space is good.
Well, I guarantee you, with some of the other DAWs, they come with a ton of stuff. Like Ableton, just the version that I got with the add-ons when I bought this keyboard, it comes with like 20 gigs of samples. You don't have to put those on. You can put the samples anywhere as long as the sampler can go load them. So for me, I'm going to be putting all my samples on a mapped drive, and this computer, no matter where I run it, will be able to get to those samples when it wants to load them. It loads them into memory. So the good thing here is it's got 8 gigs, more than enough memory to load a nice piano and 10 or 20 other instruments. So there's my shortcut.
Yep.
First 2 programs to get installed in the Ultimate DAW. Yeah, and I like to actually look at these release notes because they have been fast and furious since they put project integration with the online DAW. I gotta turn this off. Ask me every time. Oh yeah, this is part 2. This is the studio instruments. So that's why it was asking me, not because I was popping up this web page. Yeah, a lot of these updates you're going to see right now for the next couple of revisions, I guarantee you will see.
Actually, I just saw one right there. Go scroll up a sec and stop there.
Yeah, projects.
It was about
they have been
muting when you upload to BandLab.
Remember?
Above that one. 2 1 above that.
When we were asking Veronica about the weird symbols she was getting in her file names, I'm curious if she grabbed her shit this way, because they had a problem here that this version's supposed to fix and not make smiley faces or weird characters that people use in file names.
Yeah, and that's just, again, that we should revisit that because that's just a terrible practice. And just because it does give bad results in certain programs, old programs for sure, and newer programs.
But at the same time, the practice is not so much the user there, because the user names their project file in the online editor, which if they want that smiley face and the editor supports it, that works great. When something converts that and says, I'm going to automatically name this file based on the name you gave it over here in the web world, their practice is what they need to shift. Don't take funky characters if there's no reason to. Not if you're naming a track. And that's where the real problem instigates itself. The programmers could have avoided this just by thinking ahead. But man, some of these updates are actually, they are taking care of Cakewalk better than anybody who owned Cakewalk in the past.
Yeah.
Because I
it's good to see
never
it's
saw
active.
this kind of like updating and fixing on any DAW ever. Oh, and we must be to part 3. This would be the
Drum
what
replacer.
was this? Yeah, I haven't gotten a chance to really play with this yet, but
Yeah, me either.
anybody wants to show me how it works, I get the concept. You can like map things and say like this sound in the spectrum, substitute it with this sound.
Yep.
It's got potential.
It's basically taking whatever you hit and using it as triggers for the data that they're going to use here.
It's turning anything you want into a trigger. A boom boom bop that you hear in an audio file can be turned into this sound, that sound, and that sound.
Yep. And that's a good way to do it, because you could very easily then just with your mouth or your hands or whatever make a drum part and then have it actually replace that.
And there's the key with your mouth. Like some of these vocal plugins that I've seen in the last couple of years are making singers into like living instruments. I saw a dude play a bass track with his voice, and he played that kind of slappy bass that we were just listening to, all from his voice.
Yep.
Okay, yes. Let the theme editor install. The theme editor is another one that I would like to customize my Cakewalk. Eventually, I'm still trying to learn it, so making it look pretty seems silly until you completely understand your program. But I think we're done.
Nice.
If all of that finished properly, I should be able to just say open Cakewalk from here or launch it from here, and now we got to tell this what kind of setup we have. And from the virtual machine, I'm really curious because I'm connecting my Roland through the USB to the physical machine, and then I'm connecting that device to the virtual machine, assuming that it's doing what it's supposed to do. Might not be yet. Oh,
scanning your VST still.
So while it's doing that, I'm going to connect my Roland because I want my Roland to actually be connected to this virtual machine. Right now, my Roland was connected to the physical machine. Oh, hold on. I got to hit mute because now I switched it. All right. I think that should do it. Nope. I'm still getting audio from something over here. If that's the loop, then we're good. And I have to log into BandLab again, huh?
This would be basically telling Cakewalk who you are in BandLab.
Yeah. Cakewalk wants to authenticate the same way as the assistant does. And it goes through your default browser. Okay, now where's this coming from? And assuming my Phantom must not have hooked up. Did it? It is there. So Cakewalk might not be picking it up right now because I hooked it up
What about
as it
the
was initializing.
what about above that,
So
right
I'm
next
gonna
to
actually,
default audio now?
I'm gonna go through the setup with the default sound card,
Okay.
and then afterwards worry about that. Now, workspaces, you want to see your options. Change it to advanced, especially for setting up this stuff I'm about to set up. You need to see it. And I like this because I like to improve Cakewalk. Not everybody will want to check that, but I'm happy to beta test their shit. I play it with it 12 hours a day.
Yep.
And
there it was. Cool.
yeah, you noticed that, huh?
Yep.
This welcome screen, I don't use it. It's when you're first learning Cakewalk, don't depend on this to start your project. It's not a good starting point. Learn how to start a project with nothing and put stuff in it. Okay. It does see my Phantom, so it just saw it after. Normally, you would have your audio equipment plugged in before you launch Cakewalk. But you can always go reset it. How do I turn this speaker off? There we go. Beautiful. Okay, it looks like it's actually launched. Now I'm going to go back to the preferences and do this the right way. In this preference screen, when you first start up, again, down here, basic or advanced, change to advanced because a ton of shit here you want to see, need to see. This doesn't show you what you need. This does. And notice, like, Cakewalk actually recognized, oh, Phantom, better sound card. It switched to it when I said yes. It went to the better of the devices. So it is going to the sound card I want it to. Really awesome. That's my keyboard. And my keyboard does 44.1. So you can push it. This was designed for it. This is my better place. With those focus rates and some of the newer ASO devices, like 48 is your norm. And this is the other important one because right now we're in Wasapi. We don't want to be in Wasapi. We want to be in ASO. Otherwise, you will get latency because any other driver mode, there's usefulness out of Wasapi shared. If you're trying to share your Cakewalk while you're in a Skype or a Zoom or something, you might need to switch to this mode in order for Cakewalk to play nice with Zoom. Otherwise, ASO mode says, I want that sound card and nothing else running on this computer can share that with me. When you're trying to launch like a program like this while you're in a Skype or Zoom, you might need to switch to Wasapi shared while you do that. Otherwise, you will lose sound everywhere as it figures out who's in charge. We hit apply. Good thing by running
ASO
in a
just
virtual
knows he's the boss.
ASO is a boss mode. When you're in ASO mode, that driver mode says one thing owns this sound card. Nothing else can use it while I'm using it, which makes sense. With Cakewalk, with audio programs, you don't want your sound card sharing work and doing shit with other programs at the same time. That's how you get pops and clicks and weird shit in your tracks. You want it only focused on you during that time. ASO is the audio driver mode attitude. Everything else, as far as your choices here go, suck. They come with latency. It's fine for playing tracks. If I want to play back a Cakewalk project to you while I'm showing it to you in my Zoom, Wasapi shared is fine. If I'm going to lay down a track and hit my keyboards, I want it to record in the fastest possible way, and especially if you're singing, that's the mode that is the difference between fixing your track or not fixing it. So we're in ASO. That's awesome. Wasn't sure if this keyboard was going to connect to this virtual machine at first, but hey, I've got an installation of Cakewalk all of a sudden.
And it's a good
I'll
test.
be able to, yeah, I'll be able to. Now I'm curious if we're going to be able to hear it in this Zoom at the moment. Oh, this is. Let me see how fast this downloads. This isn't a lot of tracks, right? The I ran. It's
No,
only a
not
couple
many.
of tracks. Yeah. Let's see how fast it loads. And before I do, I want the mix downs. It does add extra tracks, but I want to hear it dry and
We
wet.
can afford it. We can afford the space.
Yeah. Okay. Load that. And we should be able to hear it here, assuming that I shared sound. Yeah. So the sound from this virtual machine goes out my physical machine.
Now,
Whatever
is it still going
sound
through the
source that
Roland?
I'm using.
The
Yes,
Roland
it's
being the
going
in and
through
out?
the Roland. Yeah. The questionable part here is whether it's routing to this Zoom conference.
Right.
It is going through the Roland. That's what it appears to be saying. And whether Zoom picks up on it, because what Zoom's listening as far as sharing sound here on this computer is not that computer. It's the physical computer running it. But the sound should route through it, theoretically.
Makes
We'll
sense.
see.
I'm definitely going to be working on that left hand keyboard stuff, because that was some crazy stuff.
Oh yeah, me too. That's been like a 30-year need to do as far as practice goes.
And it looks like one of those things where
been
just a couple weeks could probably really make a difference.
I've never been good at putting myself into my like regimen necessary to be the piano player I want to be. I always kind of just like sat down and said, I feel it, I play it. Getting better. I got better when I was doing a lot of it all the time, which is I'm kind of getting back there. So I'm feeling the muscles that I felt at 14, 15 in my fingers.
Nice.
The other half is the creativity, like the shit you're feeling and what you want to write about.
Yeah. For me, just the doing all the different different instruments and doing different types of parts and all that kind of stuff, and just listening and following my ear in different ways has just been. Each instrument that I do things on makes the others make more sense in a way. It's kind of weird, but like
Yeah.
more guitar I do,
Well,
the keyboard makes more sense. More bass that I do, the more something else
yes,
makes sense.
absolutely. Since I started remastering all those tracks and going through every part, looking at it from a like virtual keyboard just to see, oh, well, that is what the bass player is playing. Learning every part helped me to understand and appreciate every part and why those instruments and those sounds work really well with other sounds. Brass, I have come to like my eyes got opened like a year and a half ago. Michael Fortunato, killer trombone player. I started listening to some of his exercises on BandLab and some of the shit he was putting on, and I was like, damn, man, that's what brass is. I recognized it for finally.
Yeah.
And since then, I have really been trying to understand all the different designs and the altos, tenors, baritones, and sopranos. That whole structure there leads to understanding of a whole bunch of other parts of music.
Yeah. And just the way things break down, even just if you just looked at simple triads, right? And then you made it into the seventh chords.
Yeah.
If you add triads and make
Well,
seventh chords, now that's four notes.
there
Those
is
four
your
notes.
there is your little horn version of a triad.
Yep.
In instruments, 4 instruments designed to be the triad, and it's got to be 4 because yes, a triad's supposed to be 3, but when you want to do that, like, you need to add a 7th or slide a fucking weird note in between just to make that unique chord. The 4th actually gives you the variation. 3 notes is chord structure philosophy 101. Learn them,
vanilla
love them.
chord, yeah.
Yeah, I know the 1 5 4 6 4.
And then embellish
That
them.
shit does not take long. Yes, well, uh, it's not so much embellish them. Feel the movements between them, because a 1 6 4 sounds a lot different if I do it this way versus if I do it that way. I
Oh,
can
definitely,
make
yeah.
that same progression completely different.
And that was one thing that
And
was
it took
crazy
me
in
a
that other video
long
too.
time
We were talking about
took a
the bass
long
notes.
time to understand that, to
Where you,
understand the appreciation of the basic structure before the variations. Now I'm lost in variations. Like, shit, man, I can do that 10 different ways. Now it's like, what way do I want to do it officially?
at one point he was putting like if you were playing in C in the right hand, he was putting the C in the middle and a G above and below. So he's playing the root with the 5 above and the 5 below.
Yeah.
And then with the left hand, depending on what he was hitting with the left hand, totally changes the nature of the chord because of course he's only playing that very vanilla section on the right, and
Yeah.
then he can make it into
He's
whatever
only
kind of
holding
chord.
the third or the fifth along with the root. That on the last part on the hooks, that's what was going on. It was like the G was being hit, but there is that little chord, that note that slides. It's either C B C or D C D, depending on at which there was a little variation in those second parts.
Yeah.
But he's changed it so many times, and this is what I'm talking about when it comes to structure. Like, let me get in a groove, and hopefully we get in a groove together. I know those chords. I've been feeling that song for about 5 months now, so at this point I know what I'd like to make of that song.
Nice.
And
Yeah, that
actually what Ange was adding timing wise, Lou is awesome. He has an understanding of timing from a fucking brass level, so he knows hits and everything. Um, but when he sings a lot more 80s and 90s old school boy band style. This is his like fucking groove. When he
yeah,
does his melodies, sometimes he's like pushing them out, like in this particular case, in this song, he doesn't need to belt that out. Well, not in the verses, because the song doesn't change. It's actually the same fucking chords the whole way through. So the dynamics has to be belted out in those moments that you're declaring something, and pull it back in those introductory moments.
definitely. Yeah.
What it is for the first couple of bars, it's all soft building up, and then build it up. And
It's the
then nobody's
dynamic
going to pay
range. Yeah.
attention to the fact, yeah, they won't even care that the chords didn't change. Nobody bitches about knocking on heaven's door. It's the same fucking chords all the way through, but it's not the same fucking feel all the way through.
Oh, somebody was talking about that the other day. They were somebody in the chat
That's a
on, I think it was
perfect
Brendan.
example.
Yeah. In Angie's show, I think it was bringing up an example of the one chord progression that just kept going around and around. And the guy outside was playing, I think it was Wagon Wheel. But the guy was like, is it normal for somebody to play the same song 3 times in one night when they're playing a set of music live? It's like,
Sometimes.
no. So 3 times, it's like either only if the crowd is really, really into it or if they're really, really wasted. And he was like, yeah, well, they just came
Yeah,
off the beach and they're hanging out. So yeah, they're probably wasted.
if you really kicked ass. Oh, look
By
at
the way,
that.
Tony,
Downloaded everything. You can
down the
set it
bottom,
up.
your virtual
Awesome.
machine does have the sound muted. I see the speaker's got the X down there.
Yes, yes. I muted it earlier because I was getting speaker output.
Yep.
I was hearing myself. So I was trying to figure out what it was. So let's see if we can hear anything. Does not appear to be so. Although I'm not surprised at this point. I
Our
bet
thought
you
is that
if I do change to the sound card, the built-in sound card, because the Phantom is routing in a way that like I'm actually on here over on this machine, so I should hear what's coming from there just like you. And assuming that
now your regular machine volume is also on there, right? The virtual machine is what we looked at.
And I'm gonna change my audio so that it doesn't come out the speaker. Is it still coming out? Test, test, test. Nope. Looks like that's done. Yeah, you hear me here.
Yep. Just confirming that I still hear you.
I am still coming out. I am still coming out my speaker.
Your speaker or the virtual machine speaker? As
no,
we just re-enabled that.
The physical desktop. Yeah, I have to mute it. I bet you it's gonna go away now. No, it didn't. Oh, it is the virtual machine. Okay. Let's reestablish that. Let me mute the virtual machine. Test, test, test. Yep. No, it's not. Where the hell is that coming from?
You have so many speakers and so many computers in that room, right? You just got to chase it around, chase the sound.
Well, the sound coming out the speaker, both from the virtual machine, and they're both muted right now. That's not possible.
Go back to that for a sec. Go back to where you just were.
I got
the volume on the virtual machine, and then bring up the other list of other outputs.
Test, test, test. No, that's not it either. Wow.
So if you bring up the volume again on the virtual, and then go to the the drop down. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Let me actually change it to here. That's what I was going to do in the first place.
You got another error back there too, though.
Yeah, well, it's saying, "Hey, I can't do that."
Hey, what happened?
I'm doing this. Funny thing is I can't hear anything from here, and I should be.
Oh, go back to, instead of the Wasapi, maybe go back to ASO.
Yeah, the built-in sound card is probably not going to be ASO compliant. So, oh, wait a minute. Let me double check.
Oh yeah, you're still on the fountain.
Yeah, I had to fix the hardware inputs, and now it should actually play a little nicer. And I'm going to stay in Wasapi shared because it's the most compatible. But I do still hear myself out the speaker, and I don't think it's coming from this. It's the Zoom. I'm hearing the Zoom audio.
Okay.
But I shouldn't be because it's, oh.
Where's it being recorded?
I got it. You know what the problem is? It's Zoom actually routes itself separately from Windows. I thought muting my Windows is going to stop the Zoom audio. It's not. So
see, I was thinking it was actually going to be wherever you have the Zoom recording. I was thinking it might be playing out of that machine too.
Yeah, I see what the problem is. I'm going to stop sharing for a second so I can actually edit my Zoom audio settings and tell it to stop fucking using this monitor as a speaker. There we go. Is it done? Yes, that was the problem. See, there's another potential for looping. The application is pumping out whatever way it wants to whatever speaker it is. You got to tell Zoom to stop making noise just as much as the audio system. Now I should be able to completely unmute everything. And now, can I hear these tracks?
You're still not sharing screen though.
Oh yeah, let me do that. And I am definitely sharing sound in stereo. And to test that, I'm going to play some sound just to make sure that I am. That's coming through, right?
Yep.
Now that's on the physical machine. So the virtual machine should be producing sound for me just like the physical machine. Now I can't hear it yet because my headphones are in this Zoom conference. So even if it was playing, which it looks like it is.
There we go. I hear it.
Oh, it is playing.
Yep.
Ah, awesome.
Remember, we had the volume issue stuff. I think it was the bottom 2 tracks. If you look at them, they're like -10 and -12 or something. That was like a low drone that just needed to be way down in the back.
Now, you know what's actually cool here? Because these 2 tracks are MIDI.
Yep.
Yeah. And right now they're going through the Cakewalk TTS, but I'm just curious as to how they sound through the Cakewalk TTS.
I like them better as piano.
Well, the TTS is actually not a bad soft synth compared to the one that they give you on the one on BandLab on the online editor is not bad, but I think a lot of the sounds are derived from the samples that are in here, because this does come with like a shitload of samples of every variation. Like just this piano with those 3 different variations, these are all variations of the same, all the same general MIDI variations, and then they have like user presets of the same shit.
Yep.
Yeah, you get a lot out of the general MIDI box. Just to load up a MIDI file, you can certainly play it with a decent sound. But that is really cool.
Yeah.
We got MIDI tracks and audio tracks.
Good stuff.
Yeah. And it actually downloaded pretty clean and integrated properly. Everything's identified as what it is.
Nice compact little process.
MIDI. Now, the interesting thing is that you also get the wave mixdown of the MIDI. So, like, that's useful if you like the effects that you had there, because that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, these would have been a lot lower. I think it was down at like -20 or whatever decibels. It was like, or it says right there actually.
Well, yeah,
minus 10.5.
And MIDI volume is not the same as audio volume, not even close. See, now I don't hear. Oh, there's the. Now, see, this is not going to the patch that you wanted. It's not even routed.
What's that? I see something over there.
That's where
they're.
That's
next
where
to the solo.
They're still
you have it muted. No, you have it muted right there, don't you?
Well, here's the problem. This track right here, this MIDI track,
yep,
has no channel, has no preset. Now, it might actually have the data inside. I'm sure that they put an event in there. No, they didn't. Okay, that's why you're hearing a piano right now. You're not hearing the sound that you wanted to hear over on BandLab because there's no routing for that patch. This patch right now is not even set to a sound. It's defaulting to piano, and it's down at 41 on MIDI. 41 is really low, so let's listen to what this actually sounds like at normal volume. And it's a piano, keep in mind, at the moment.
What's the orange
also,
button next?
I don't like the pan.
What's the orange button next to the solo button? That's that.
The monitor button.
Okay, there you go.
This is if you wanted to input this. If you wanted to push that MIDI signal to something else, it
looked like an X in the bottom corner that was like muted. That's what it looked like.
No. It's basically when you turn this on or off, you can push this signal to somewhere else. On these audio tracks, it lets you hear what the monitored output sounds like with the effects and everything.
So that would be that low drone that would have been the one that had the when you were listening to
yes.
the
This should sound like this. And on BandLab, with the BandLab synth and this mix down, it sounds like that.
And that's too much effect on it anyway. But
yeah, so what you would need to do here is basically as a MIDI track, let's close this event editor. You want to select a channel because a MIDI track needs a MIDI channel and you got 16 of them. I'm kind of curious as to what channel you were using originally, but you only have 2 MIDI tracks here.
It probably would have been channel 1 for both of them because I was just using my Carbon C61.
Well, here's the thing: if they're going to play right now, they need to be on separate channels if they're separate instruments. So right now, this is playing a piano sound by default, but we gave it channel 1, and we're going to use just the preset normal one, and pick a general MIDI sound. So in here we have a general. Do you remember the name?
Some kind of organ, I would say.
Well, you got like polysynth and space voice. It sounds kind of like one of these ones in this area.
Is this the low drone or is this the piano?
This is the general MIDI sounds that you have. In general MIDI, there's 128 sounds, and chances are the name of that patch. Do I still have it open? Hold on. Oh no, I never loaded on here. If you were in the BandLab DAW and you were looking at this track, like you picked a MIDI patch.
What I did is I just picked an instrument. I just went to the instruments and picked an instrument from there. I'm getting back. I think I'm in the project even.
Some of the BandLab synth ones are not general MIDI. Some of them will be because general MIDI does cover like most instruments. There's 128 instruments in general MIDI, and there's a few different synths. Fantasia, polysynth. Polysynth is what I'm actually thinking it is, but let me listen.
Yeah, give it a try.
It's close.
It's close. I just got the project here, so let me see what it is.
See, so now if I mute yours,
I picked a dub super saw. The instrument was dub super saw.
And in general MIDI, that's as close as I'm going to get to something in the 128 that comes with the general MIDI set.
Yeah.
But if I was routing this to my like Phantom, I would find the same kind of, you know.
And the other one
finding patches on your synth.
Thick air pad was the other one for the other key part.
An air pad.
Thick air pad.
Okay,
yeah.
So this one should have like a. And again, I'm going to put this on channel 2. So that way it doesn't step on channel 1.
Yeah, that sort of thing. Nice. Very cool.
So that guitar is mixed with her voice, huh?
Yeah, they're not separate.
Yeah. Well, all
she
these
probably
other
has those second tracks.
You know, now that those 2 MIDI tracks are back to like producing a sound on the synth here, and the TTS is a good sound engine. I think it actually makes a
Yeah.
nice patch.
It actually sounded a lot better.
What you get with the is cleaner, and what you get with the BandLab editor, BandLab lets you add their effects processing to a MIDI track because they render the MIDI track to an audio file, so they can actually apply dig it, they can apply audio effects to a MIDI track. And that's why you can load up a guitar sound in the BandLab editor and give it that space reverb and do cool shit with a what you normally couldn't do with a MIDI track. MIDI tracks you don't apply effects to, not traditionally. You're not giving a MIDI track reverb because a MIDI track is an audio.
Now, was it the
But
was it
here
this
it's
song
nice
or
and
was it
clean.
was it this one or was it a different one that we also did with Ashley the first time we tried to bring something over to Cakewalk?
Yeah, we got to
Remember
get
this.
that one off Angie's computer.
Gotcha.
That's the one we edited half of it, and it's sitting on her laptop.
Okay.
We need to copy that and put it on yours. We need to get your shit set up too. So
Yep. I mean, I have it. I have the BandLab project, and actually, we invited you to the project, though, right? So if you went to your project,
yeah,
you would be able to import that, but it wouldn't be what you're saying is it wouldn't be the one that we brought to Angie's and worked on already.
yeah. I actually downloaded it at the same time. That was when I had that squirrely connection. So
Right.
I was downloading it, hoping it would be downloaded by the time the show started. Hers did download. Mine didn't download for another 20 minutes that night.
Yeah.
But I
That was
did
before you
eventually
got
get
your.
it.
That was before
I
you got
don't
your
have
license,
any of those
so.
changes. Yeah. All the changes we did were on Angie's. So
Okay.
what we need to do is actually, what I want is the Cakewalk file. So I just got to zip it up off her machine, put it on the Google Drive, and good thing is we didn't use any third party effects. Everything we did was out the box.
Yep.
That's nice and easy to load up anywheres and continue.
Oh, speaking of which, now that you got Cakewalk on the virtual machine here, wouldn't Reefer be a good thing to get in there?
Yes, at this point installing plugins, although let me close this and stabilize this. About to have a cigarette. And when I start installing plugins, before I do, I want to get certain DAWs set up.
Right, makes sense.
Because, well, certain plugins come with multiple versions. They come with a 32-bit, a 64-bit, and Pro Tools version because AAX is not BST. So some plugins I want to have at least Pro Tools on there so that when I start setting up the plugins, the program's there to make sure.
Yeah,
so
that makes sense.
After this, the next DAW to install after Cakewalk is Pro Tools. And I'm not paying what they charge per month because I don't care for what they offer. So I will be using the free version on that. It's good for like converting and loading something. You just 3 projects is your limitation. So any DAW that limits me in projects is not going to convince me that I want to spend money on them.
I mean, you can
Don't
do 3
limit how
projects
many
ever, or is
projects
that
I
3
have.
projects you could have at any time? Like you could work on these 2, and then you got to delete one, and then you could work on more, like that kind of.
Yeah, you have to flush the toilet. As far as they don't give you good local control of your projects, they push you to make this project in the cloud, period. And no, I don't work in the cloud when it comes to my audio. I work on the machine and I push it to the cloud. But I don't want it to live in the cloud totally. And if you're limiting to how many projects I can use this program, which is what I think is the case, I don't know how to make a local Pro Tools project that the free version will let me use. Or at least I haven't tried enough yet.
Yeah. That was definitely a solid,
Going to
successful
other
test for the
DAWs.
BandLab and Cakewalk.
Yeah, well, it was actually one of the easier DAWs to install, other than the BandLab Assistant. That part, there's still people who actually go and download the pirated version of Cakewalk just so that they don't need the BandLab Assistant to do it. But that's just silly, because if it does fuck up and not do what it's supposed to do, that's a variable. Like, this is a free program. The only thing that you need to do is create a BandLab account. That's not a big deal.
Yeah, and actually, I think I got
what
my
you get.
I think I got my cousin Jeffrey Beck, and my cousin Linda.
Oh
The two
yeah,
of them.
he's gotta be.
I'm going to get them up here because I was, when I was showing them BandLab and showing the Give You Cakewalk, they were the ones who actually gave me Cakewalk and the original one on CD.
I was going to say
like
they probably paid for Sonar like $800 at one point. Sonar was the shit for like a good 8 years. I paid $600 for Sonar.
Yep.
And I almost paid $1,000 for Cubase. At one point, before I jumped off the music bandwagon for a decade, Cubase, I was shifting to it. Because
So
Cakewalk
they gave me
I'd been
Cubase
with
for free.
since the very first version. Yeah, that's how I got teased. I got this Yamaha 1X, and it came with a good version of Cubase, and I was like,
Yep.
whoa. It was ahead of Cakewalk at that time. What was going on? It was pretty much like between 2004 and 2007. VST development was really kicking in. Those plugins and all that shit that nowadays, like this is the real DAW is in the plugins. Back then, VST1 was still smoothing itself out, and Steinberg was part of the VST. They came up with the concept of virtual effects the way that they did, and it did change the DAW world. But eventually, Cubase was great with VST2. Since VST3 has come out and it's become an open standard across DAWs, nowadays it really you don't need to go with the ones who made the VST technology anymore. There are some other choices that are just as good with VST support.
It's like demonopolized.
Well, yeah, when VSTs ran like crap on everything but Steinberg applications, VST development wasn't going the way it should, and now that VST3 started, it's like Windows. When Windows 3 came out, it opened up the concept of others making apps for this operating system. Why was there no Windows before 3? Because you couldn't make programs for it. And nobody wanted to because they couldn't.
Yep. That's where I got my first certification, Windows 3.
Yeah. I got Windows 3, I got XP, Red Hat,
Nice.
Whole bunch of certifications that were useful at the time.
Yeah. For me, it was the hardware ones when I was in the city. We had to, we were a warranty repair depot. So like anything, if it was an IBM hardware, if it was HP hardware, if it was compact hardware, whatever, had to be able to work on all
Oh, and back then it was so proprietary. I mean, if you were dealing with a compact versus an HP back before they became the same fucking company, ironically, but in the 90s, or God forbid, a Packard Bell.
Or a gateway.
Certain machine. Yeah, the gateways in the early days were like, dude, I'm not getting a gateway. You suck. Remember that fucking stoner commercial they had, which was a good marketing. Like it was just like the Apple guy and the PC guy marketing. Sure, convince people to buy computers for these dumbass reasons and not what they actually need.
Yep.
See, I always think of it from a business perspective, though. To me, a computer is a tool. I get it nowadays. It's an instrument. And hey, I actually understand that too. It is an instrument, but it's an instrument I use as a tool, and I don't shop for them lightly. I think about what I need and what's this going to do.
Which one was I doing a minute ago?
People have gotten complacent when it comes to their hardware. The whole mobile technology has made them not even think about what their hardware can do or what will let them do. Whereas in the old days, if you bought a fucking computer and found out, like, oh my God, you mean I can't run this shit because the Microsoft says I can't? Not because the computer can't do it. In the old days, people would have bitched and moaned. Now they just take it for granted, like, oh, I want that iPhone. Well, if Apple says you can't tether that iPhone into a Wi-Fi connection, which for the first like 4 versions of iPhones, you couldn't use them as hotspots. Not because they couldn't, but because Apple said you shouldn't.
They said no.
Yeah, and if you wanted to, you had to fucking jailbreak it. make it do what it's supposed to do using a $10 app that you're not sure if you should give $10 from your credit card on, but hey, it turned it into a Wi-Fi hotspot for me. So don't tell me you can't do it, Apple. Tell me why you won't let me do it.
Let me give you this one.
Does it make
I went ahead and I took
the technology less reliable? In which case, is there a compelling reason that you would want to lock that feature out?
I stole the share back for a second, so I was going to go make another cup of coffee. So I was going to go play the last 5 minutes of the left-hand bass guy, so, Mr. Jamiroquai.
You like the control, huh?
Yes, indeed.
I got the power.
Okay, so here's a fun one to try and learn to help your independence. Bob James, Nautilus. I'll play it for you. Have a listen. It's a real tricky one. The left hand just stays on that riff, but the right hand goes rhythmically right against it, which makes it really tricky. And the way I approach these sort of things is just learn the left hand, learn it, because that's the tricky bit, to get the rhythm right of the left hand until you've got it and you can just play it in your sleep. You don't need to think about it at all. Then obviously you learn the right hand, then go back to the left hand, and then slowly try to introduce the right hand without thinking about what the left hand is doing, you know, get it into autopilot. You'll start and you just think, I'm just not going to be able to do this. But eventually you will get it, and you'll feel great when you get it, and it'll help you expand your mind, you know, and get that independence going on. So first the left hand. Then the right hand. Then bring them both together. That'll keep you busy during lockdown. So let's talk about the independence between the left and right hand. I think a good way of practicing this is obviously finding a piece of music that has two parts that go against each other, and then practicing one hand, then the other hand. I'll give you an example. There's a tune I like by Roy Ayers called Our Time Is Coming, and it's got a piano intro, which sounds simple, but is actually quite difficult because they go against each other, the two hands. Have a listen to this.
He's got some great controllers.
Okay, like I said, it sounds quite simple, but try doing it. It's a good little challenge. First, the left hand. Okay, now the right hand part. Two together.
Oh my God, That's not fucking easy.
Yeah, you're saying it sounds simple, but it's not.
No, that's like Charles Schultz kind of shit.
So practicing
like
that is a really good way of starting to get some independence with left hand and right hand. No one can do it straight away. So don't give up. You know, when you think I just can't get this, it's impossible. You know, just keep trying. Never give up until you get.
That next one he's got there, 5 funk licks on keyboard. That's a good one for another time.
He's got a cool fucking setup. Those
Yeah,
controllers he's got around him, they're
Yeah.
all fucking pretty cool.
Definitely. I mean, he's got crazy shit.
You know, I really need to start utilizing my pads because with all these recent controllers that I've got, the 16 grid pads have really become standard as like everything is coming with them, and they are useful. I just never got into the mindset of and they are actual drum pads. Like in the case of my 2 Rolands, they are responsive. They
Yeah.
make better drum machines than the ones I used to play on back in the 90s. I grew up on the Roland.
It came a long way. I mean, even just the little one that they had over my buddy Joey's house, it was just literally just 8 pads on a tiny little, thing with just a connection for the USB. But
and some people
just
can
the way
really
they feel.
finger drum.
Yeah. And that guy I showed you the
Louis
other day,
like that.
The guy Mark Rebele, you said like the first song that he did was the one that you liked a lot, and then later on it was like, not as much. But it was the guy who was making the loops on that. What was I think it was not a Boss, whatever that thing had like the 5 separate loop sets, and they could use the volume or the knob to like turn his voice higher or lower, doing the crazy shit.
And that's the awesome thing when you're putting together your beats with like the drum machine mentality, making that like 1 beat loop or that 2 beat loop that you need to start with, and then adding the different variations that you nowadays you just layer with pads, saying like this, when I turn this one on, then boom, 3 more layers turn on. When I turn it off, those 3 layers disappear. That whole mentality of building your beats in 1 or 2 measures is why drum machines really complemented synthesis. All this electronica that you've heard in the last like 25-ish 30 years since synths came into the picture and drum machines came into the beat picture, this is why hip hop, rock, and all those have transformed into electronical versions. It's the digital side to the analog sound.
One thing is that we stopped your screen share when I grabbed it for the bass video there, so I wasn't sure if you were going to install that next one or not.
Yeah, no, we got Cakewalk installed, and that's good. That's good for this recording. And the next one is going to be Pro Tools, because before all the other ones, I need to establish those 2 for the plugins, and everything else is just the same thing, just a different DAW.
Cool. One thing is, if we needed to get the
awesome to see that it actually, I mean, granted it was Wasapi mode, but it worked fine. Like I can use this to do mixing. So like if I want to load up and mix something for a show and I want to load it into, my local Cakewalk, I can use this one. I don't have to muck up my music machine, which is already mucked up with a bunch of other shit.
Yeah, solid. Good to have options.
It's not where I'm going to record, but it is where I can definitely mix.
Cool.